Welcome back. Let's continue now. Matabeleland. It's a poignant documentary that offers a deep personal exploration of love, of legacy and reconciliation. It's set against the formidable backdrop of Zimbabwe's dark history, the 1983 Matabeleland massacre, of course, where over 20,000 lives were lost. By telling the story through the lens of Chris Nyathi, it's a Zimbabwean man haunted by his father's unburied spirit. The weight of generational trauma as well. This doccie-film humanises a chapter of history, often left unspoken. Directed by award-winning filmmaker Nyasha Kadandara, Matabeleland will be making its African premiere this June. It's happening at the renowned Encounter South African International Documentary Festival. And so for more, Nyasha joins us. Nyasha, good morning and thank you. Thank you for joining us at this hour. Congratulations.
Thank you, and good morning to you too.
So if we obviously just backtracking on the significance of telling this story, perhaps you could tell us the inspiration behind, the need to tell the story of Matabeleland, the impact that it's also had on your filmmaking journey at large.
Sure. I think I met Chris in 2018, which was a very pivotal time in Zimbabwe when there was a change in government. Yeah. And a lot of people were trying to do new things, were hopeful. And for Chris, that meant going to look for his father's remains. For me as a filmmaker, it meant turning a lens into my home country, which I hadn't worked in previously. So it was a very opportune time for both of us. And then we embarked in then what became a 7-year journey of telling his story, this portrait of African masculinity on the backdrop of many different problems, social, economic, but also the historical violences that happen in Matabeleland.
No, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. I think if you even speak to the approach that you took in portraying the personal and collective trauma of the 1983 massacre, perhaps you could unpack that without giving away too much, of course, especially sharing Chris Nyathi's story at large.
Yes, I think, a lot of our stories tend to fall, they can be very surface level, or they focus on characters that are either a hero or an absolute victim or a villain. And this film was really trying to challenge the typical gaze that we have of that. And the way I got to film it was very, very taste style, handheld camera, just me in the room with Chris, with Dumi, with his children on this journey following his day-to-day life, which is what then made it so intimate, because even the conversations that they have are just regular conversations someone has on a Tuesday evening at dinner, very closed door, behind the scenes kind of moments are what you actually see unfold in the film.
Yeah. If you speak to the challenges that you would have encountered in the creative process, perhaps even overcoming your own inertia, what comes to mind as we're speaking?
I mean, it's been a long process. Like I've said, it's 7 years. So you can imagine it's hard to stay motivated in making a film for 7 years, but I definitely had an amazing team that I could work with. A lot of the team members, my producer and editor, who are based in Kenya at Lightbox, really, really helped on this journey, as well as like friends and family. But I also think it takes a lot to make such a personal film. Matabeleland, the place, is very personal to me as someone who was born there, but having to grow up and learn about some of the historical injustices that happened that I wasn't necessarily told about or learned about in school. So it was a bit scary, to be honest, when we started to make this film. But, I was really resolved that I wanted to see it through. And I was also in awe of Chris's bravery and vulnerability to allow the camera into his home. Yeah. And I think together now we've made a very beautiful film.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also continues the conversations about healing and, post-colonial societies as well, collective trauma. What do you actually want people to walk away with? So how are they going to be forever changed with this reckoning?
I think it's a very powerful opening for people to start conversations that they previously wouldn't have been able to have. I think for people who don't really know what happened in Matabeleland, this is a very eye-opening documentary and really puts a face behind the statistics that we just usually throw around. 20,000 people were killed, but what does that actually mean? And I think for the people who are the loved ones of the 20,000, they get to feel seen in terms of their intergenerational trauma, in terms of the pain that they've experienced. So I'm really hoping that in the film when audiences watch it. And we've already started to experience that with our premiere that happened last night. You know, people saying, this film helps me understand my uncle or my father better, or this film really, you know, helps me sort of deal and think about the cathartic nature of what it means to go and find your loved ones who haven't been buried properly and bring them back home.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about that Ghanaian wisdom of Sankofa, you know, going back to fetch and then return in order to heal and learn from the past as well. If we look at the lessons from, you know, the past, from the Matabeleland massacre, given our contemporary reality, not only limited to Zimbabwe, but even the African continent at large. I mean, we're seeing a plethora of other themes playing out in terms of agency and, you know, even just hope at large. What do you think we could learn from that?
I mean, I think we really need to reflect so that we don't make the same mistakes. As you say, across the continent, there are a lot of places that have experienced historical injustices, who've experienced massacres, and these issues have not been dealt with. They haven't been addressed. People haven't been given a chance or a platform to heal. And until that happens, it's going to continue to hold us back. In order for us to move forward as a country or as a people, we have to remember where we came from, and we have to really acknowledge what that means. So I'm really hoping it sort of helps people find their fuller identity, you know, that I am many of these things, and all of these different events contributed to my existence. Independence, Gukurahundi, post-election violence, all of those things matter and build off from each other. Yeah. So I think it's an opportunity for us to learn. Sorry.
It's okay.
But I also think the film offers a very tangible way in which you can offer healing to people. Yeah. And you see the impact of what that does to people even decades later.
No, absolutely. I wonder, even as we wrap up, you know, on the back of the premiere that you mentioned, and now it's set to also be screened in various other festivals and in places, any particular moments or messages from the film that stood out you know, most importantly for you, that made you sit back and reflect?
I think it's in our screening yesterday, somebody said they talked about the immigrant experience, which is something that Chris and I, the principal character, connected on from the very beginning that we met. He'd been living in Botswana and had left Zim in 2007. I left at the same time to become a student and haven't lived in Zimbabwe since. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Zimbabweans are immigrants in different countries, including South Africa. And I think that experience and the complications that come with it, the dynamics of being in a relationship with somebody from a different country, what does it mean to take people home, or just how difficult life can be, how people can get exploited, was one of the hidden themes that I think was really important to bring out. And I'm seeing people connect with that and saying to themselves, you know, I've never really thought about what other people go through when it's what it's like to not live in your own home, but also really want to go back.
Yeah, well, that conversation continues. Nyasha, I'm going to leave ours there for now. Well done, and thank you for joining us and sharing that. Award-winning director and cinematographer Nyasha Kadandara talking to us about the Matabeleland. Of course, that premiered last night, screened last night, or will be premiering at the Encounter South African International Documentary Festival. It's just chatting about the importance of highlighting, you know, past stories in order to understand where we are and, of course, where we're headed. That in relation to the Matabeleland massacre in 1983.